I was defeated by my arch nemesis, the ocean. Once more, my Japanese supervisor and I went unto the breach and tried our hand at fishing in Suzu. Once more, it was windy and wavy. Once more, I got horribly seasick. I'd like to sit here and tell you that I fared better than my last fishing expedition, which resulted in me throwing my guts up. Well, this time I didn't lose my breakfast. I did not fare better. My supervisor is a legendary fisherman and ended up catching about 10 eating-sized fish. What's tragic is he did most of the catching with the rod that was meant for me. Why wasn't I wielding such a legendary fishing rod? Well, even with seasickness medication, the motion of the ocean was too much for my little brain, and about 5 minutes on the fishing raft, I was down and out, flat on my back, nauseous as hell. Because we had just started our adventure, I now had to wait 6 hours for the boat captain to come and rescue me from the raft. So, with no other choice, I slept on my back, enjoying the aroma of fresh morning air and fish chum, while waiting patiently for the captain's return. When I had stumbled defeated into my house, all I had to show for my effort that morning was a sunburn on my face and some nice video of the ocean. Until I become more accustomed to the sea, I'm afraid my future fishing adventures will end in a similar disaster. April 17th, 11:14 p.m. I was sleeping soundly when my bed and house started rocking like I was in a fishing nightmare. My body activated alert mode and I hopped on my feet while the ground was still shaking, confused why I was awake, why I was standing, and why the earth was shaking. Moments later, my phone alarm went off and Japanese announcements came over the intercom. I could hear doors opening, cars starting, and the sound of people moving outdoors. And without any further info, I assumed it was time to evacuate. A tsunami was on its way. Outside my house, my neighbor was running already, and she said to me in Japanese, "Let's go!" She headed in the direction of the tsunami tower, but I did not follow her. Instead, I sprinted in the direction of the mountain evacuation point. I had been instructed in the past to go to the mountain if I needed to evacuate, and while I trust the tower, a mountain is a mountain. I called my friend and met him at the evacuation point. Once atop the mountain, I scoured the internet and my disaster safety app so I could update the ALT region block I am a part of. I was waiting for confirmation from the Japanese government that there would be no tsunami, which arrived at midnight. Working with the information I had available, my friend and I were able to keep our friends and fellow Jets updated. It turns out, despite this being a relatively strong earthquake, we were not in danger from a tsunami. A fact I learned a full half hour after. No native Japanese people or fluent Japanese-speaking people asked us if we were safe or offered us information about the earthquake, which I was disappointed by. It was a good learning experience, and I got good practice if I ever need to evacuate again. April, I embarked upon 2 insane adventures. The first trip was down to Japan's beautiful inland sea and subsequent island hopping route known as the Shimanani Kaido. It's a famous series of islands and bridges, and it's especially a popular challenge for cyclists. You know I couldn't resist. On the first day, Timo and I ripped out a kochi and enjoyed ice skating in Ehime together before driving over the Shimanani Kaido bridges that night. We stopped briefly at an impossibly gorgeous viewpoint that overlooks the first bridge of the Shimanani Kaido and Saijo City. There, we witnessed a breathtaking sunset and gazed down upon the path that would challenge us the following day. Morning of the Kaido, we took a bus back to where we staged our bikes the night before and set off on an adventure, immediately pedaling up a brutal hill. To give you an idea of the terrain, the Kaido bridges and islands are mostly flat, but before hopping onto the next island, there is always an uphill portion leading up to the bridge. The good news is, at the end of the bridges, there is also a fast and easy downhill portion of the trail leading on to a new island. I'm not sure the downhill makes up for all the brutal uphill, but those few moments were some of the nicest biking that day for sure. Overall, the cycle was incredibly gorgeous. It wasn't too strenuous, and the jaw-dropping ocean views, jungle islands, ancient shrines, and luscious forests kept the experience fresh and interesting. If I was to do it again, I would break up the cycle over a couple days and give myself more time to explore what the islands had to offer. As it was, there were many compelling shops and locations to visit. One place was a cliffside lemon farm and lemonade bar. It was a beautiful building and location dedicated to fresh lemon soda. While Timo and I didn't have much time to stop, we enjoyed a brief lemonade before blasting off again. But it wouldn't be a bold Busan trip without something disastrous happening. Disaster struck as we neared the midpoint of our journey. Going over the lip of a curb with my bike, I landed hard on my back tire, and the tire instantly popped. There was no mistaking it. It was flat, and my dreams of making it to the Shimanani finish line were all but shattered. Timo and I discussed what our options were in this kind of situation, so we were prepared. Thankfully, we were able to rush to a local bike shop as they were closing. Timo's Japanese was enough to explain what had happened, and they called for a bike repairman. I threw my bike in the back of a Japanese grandfather's truck and hopped in, ripping off to his shop.
Oh no! There you go!
He patched up my bike while I waited anxiously. Gods be praised, it was a cheap, quick, and easy fix, and soon Timo and I were back on the road. Crisis averted. To cycle the main route of the Shimanani Kaido, you follow a painted blue line along the pavement. It is a good guide, but at some points the blue line leads you astray, disappears, and at some intersections there are multiple blue lines leading in different directions. This resulted in a couple switchbacks, dead ends, and wrong ways over the course of our adventure. The longest we were ever lost was half an hour, but we soon realized our mistake and got back on track. The last hour of cycling we did was after sunset. Navigating the road and following the blue line in the darkness was nerve-wracking. Timo was ingenious and brought a light for her bike, but this was something I had overlooked. I couldn't stray far from her without getting consumed by darkness. It was the end of the day and we were tired and hungry, and we needed to check in our hotel under a time crunch. We had to be very careful choosing directions and to not get lost anymore. Despite us paying close attention, the dark road nearly threw us off track a couple times. But between the two of us, we navigated the blackness to the very end. The joke was on us. Our journey was far from over, as we still had to cycle back to our parking spot. We were nervous to leave the blue line behind, and our worry was justified. We, no exaggeration, traversed an entire island's worth of mountain. It was so steep for so long that we had to dismount and hike our way up. Then, in the darkness, we overheard rustling in the trees and grunting, the kind of sounds an angry, disgruntled inoshishi might make. That, or a hungry monster. Timo and I didn't wait around to find out what it was, and we ripped out of there, eventually returning to our vehicle in the city and ending the day's adventure. I was surprised I maintained my stamina over the 7-hour, 88-kilometer bike ride. After I finished, I felt like I could have gone a few more hours if I needed to. It was a monument to the physical condition I had earned, biking and running so much the last 4 months. The following morning, we caught the ferry to Miyajima, a popular island destination off the coast of Hiroshima. This week, at the end of May and the start of April, was peak tourist season, and the Miyajima sakura were in full bloom. We had a breakfast of fried oysters, which are farm fresh in Hiroshima and are a Miyajima specialty. It was admittedly a strange breakfast, but those are the best oysters I've ever eaten in my life. Afterwards, we bought coffee jelly ice cream and fresh momiji croissants. They came in apple, chocolate, custard, and other delicious flavors, and were hot and insanely yummy.
Well, we're dramatic this way.
After gorging ourselves on local specialties, we had enough energy to set out on a hike. Our hiking trail was on Mount Misen. It was decorated with several waterfalls, temples, statues, sakura, and a gorgeous river that beckoned me to swim in it. I refrained. Stone steps made up most of the path, so it was a relatively easy hike. Last time at the top of Mount Misen, I lit a candle for traffic safety, and on the way home, my car broke down in a tunnel. Considering my luck with those candles, this time I didn't light one. I did, however, experience an amazing view of Hiroshima and the surrounding islands, and ate a momiji croissant in appreciation before descending the mountain. The final day in Hiroshima, we had a massive pancake breakfast and toured the Peace Museum. This was my second visit, and the museum was no less horrific than the first time I visited. It was busier, as many foreign tourists were now inside. It was Timo's first time, and she was as horrified as I was upon my first visit. Leaving Hiroshima and the Shimanani Kaido behind, our trip was concluded with one last stop at a chocolate cafe, where I got to try chocolate soda for the first time. I was not impressed. Let's just say I won't be craving a chocolate soda anytime soon. Flower viewing is one of life's many pleasures, and there are few more beautiful trees than sakura to enjoy. In Kochi, there is a large 150-year-old sakura tree called the Gecko Sakura, or Moonlight Sakura. During Japanese Ohanami, this tree is illuminated at night, and it's unimaginably beautiful. It's like entering an elven forest and gazing upon a mythological tree. Of course, there are countless other beautiful sakura trees and forests. I never really grew tired of seeing them. They are blooming and pretty for a week or two at most, so I tried to appreciate every one. One amazing spot for sakura was in Okawa town, way up in the Kochi mountains and bordering on Ehime. A legendary Kochi jet was playing tunes on his saxophone at a local sakura festival there. The field in that town had sakura arranged in a heart shape, and the field itself was filled with brilliant nanohana, or canola. It made for good pictures, lovely music, and a nice lunch. You can always count on blooming sakura to make for a grand picnic. Wow, Kochi A-Jet hiked the tallest mountain in western Japan, Mount Ishizuchi. This was a revenge hike for me. On my first attempt last year, the ropeway cable car was under maintenance, forcing us to hike an extra 6 hours up and down the mountain. This meant we were unable to reach the peak that day. This time, the weather was clear and the cable car was operational, so we were given a fighting chance to make it to the top. We started off the adventure with the aforementioned cable car, our ears popping and hearts pounding in excitement. It dropped us off at the trailhead, and we walked through the Ishizuchi mountain village, raiding the vending machines for coffee. My toe was feeling a little blistery in my shoe, and a very nice lady gave me some second skin to prevent it from rubbing inside my sock and boot. This probably saved me a lot of pain later that hike. I was positioned near the rear of the group and enjoyed chatting with ALTs I hadn't had the pleasure to meet before. Some parts of the hike featured a metal grating on the side of Ishizuchi, overlooking mountain ranges in the distance. This was my favorite part. I'll let the footage say the rest here. Just in case you thought this Basan couldn't get any bolder, in early April I made a platform and won an election for National A-Jet Block 8 representative. This means I can represent jets from Ehime, Kochi, Tokushima, and Kagawa on a national level, the entire island of Shikoku. This means I can undertake A-Jet activities on a large scale, which is epic. I've already been following through with my platform goals, posting on the Block 8 Facebook, talking to Kagawa A-Jet, and making A-Jet jet videos and articles, and joining the Shikoku A-Jet chapters to report on their major events. I'm happy to undertake this responsibility. Wow, another jam-packed month, with surf camp, marathons, yosakoi dancing, local events, more traveling, hiking, and hijinks on the horizon. The adventures aren't going to end anytime soon. But that's all for now. Take care and be bold.